The earth trembled beneath the weight of the invaders. Alien ships, dark and imposing, filled the skies, blocking out the sun. For weeks, humanity had watched helplessly as the Stelchians, a species with technology far beyond anything Earth had ever seen, slowly but surely crushed all resistance. Cities fell. Armies were decimated. The world was on the brink of collapse. As the last major human strongholds crumbled, the Stelchians believed the war was won. Their leader, Orstar, stood high above the battlefield, watching from his command ship as the final pieces of Earth's defenses shattered. A sense of finality filled the air. Earth's fate seemed sealed. Orstar's cold, alien eyes studied the destruction below, calculating the last movements of the human forces. His fleet hovered above in perfect formation, prepared for the final strike that would wipe out any remaining pockets of resistance. He had no doubts. The humans, pitifully outgunned and outclassed, were on the verge of extinction. They thought they could resist, Orstar muttered to his officers, his voice low and firm. But this world will be ours, and there is no one left who can stop us. The command room buzzed with energy as technicians fed him information. We have tracked their last stronghold, Commander, one of the officers said. It's the old military bunker in the mountains. We'll send a full assault force to wipe them out in hours. Orstar nodded, satisfaction creeping into his alien features. Yes, let them hide. It will make the victory all the sweeter. Far beneath the alien ships, hidden deep in the mountain ranges, a group of human survivors prepared for their final stand. It was hard to believe that just days ago, Earth had been a thriving world, full of life, bustling with energy. Now it felt like a dying ember in a vast, cold universe. The last pockets of humanity had been pushed to the edge, their resources drained, their hopes dimming with every passing hour. The survivors in the bunker knew that this was the end of the road. Or was it? Among them stood Captain Ethan Walker, a man whose name had become synonymous with resistance. He was no general, no grand strategist, just a soldier who had fought with everything he had to protect his home. But now, as the world seemed to fall around him, he knew that this wasn't just about fighting. It was about survival. It was about reminding the invaders that Earth was not theirs to take, that humanity could not be conquered, not as long as there was still breath in their bodies. Ethan had seen it all, the invasion, the destruction, the deaths of friends and comrades. He had been there during the early days of the war, when hope was still alive, when humanity still believed it could win. Now hope seemed like a distant memory. But Ethan was not ready to accept defeat. "What's the plan, Captain?" Sergeant Kelly asked, her voice steady, but with an edge of uncertainty. She was one of the last remaining members of the human army, and like Ethan, she had seen her share of battles. But even she could feel the weight of their situation. The humans had been pushed to their limit. Ethan's eyes were focused on a map of the remaining Stelchian positions. The alien fleet above Earth was massive, a relentless force that had wiped out entire countries in a matter of days. Their weapons were powerful, their ships nearly invincible. They had everything they needed to finish the job. Everything, except one thing. They had underestimated humanity. "We don't have much time," Ethan said, his voice calm but firm. "But we have a chance. The Stelchians think they've won, and they're coming for us. But they haven't accounted for one thing." Kelly raised an eyebrow, unsure of where he was going with this. "What's that?" Ethan's gaze sharpened. "Rule number 1. Never underestimate humanity." The room fell silent. The meaning of his words began to sink in. Despite their hopeless situation, despite the alien technology that far outmatched theirs, there was something the humans still had. Something the Stelchians could never predict. "We've been fighting them the same way," Ethan continued. "But it's time to change that. We're going to make them believe we're weaker than we are. We're going to lure them into a trap. But we're outnumbered, outgunned, and outmatched," Sergeant Kelly pointed out, her voice laced with disbelief. "What makes you think they'll fall for it?" Ethan stood up, looking each of his teammates in the eye. Because they don't understand us. They think we're just a primitive species, an obstacle to their conquest. They don't know the one thing that sets us apart. We fight when we have nothing left to lose. And that's what will make them fall. There was a moment of silence, and then a low murmur of agreement. The survivors had no illusions about the dangers ahead. They knew they were walking into a nearly certain death trap. But if there was one thing humanity had always done, it was fight. And as long as there was breath in their lungs, they would not surrender. As the team prepared for what would be their final mission, Ethan's mind raced. The Stelchans had underestimated them at every turn, assuming that humanity's will to survive would break under the weight of their superior technology. But that was the mistake the aliens made. The heart of humanity had never been in technology. It had always been in their spirit, their refusal to give up, even when the odds were impossibly stacked against them. The plan was simple. They would infiltrate the heart of the Stelchan invasion, strike at their supply lines, and cause enough damage to disrupt their operation long enough for Earth's remaining forces to mount a counteroffensive. It wasn't a perfect plan. It wasn't even a good plan. But it was the only plan they had. Ethan gathered his team and gave them one final order. We're going to show them who they're dealing with. It's time for the Stelchans to learn the first rule of war: never underestimate humanity. As the survivors prepared to embark on their final mission, a single thought raced through Ethan's mind. They had one shot at this, one chance to turn the tide of the war, and no matter what happened, they would make the invaders pay for underestimating Earth. The storm outside raged as Captain Ethan Walker and his team gathered in the war room, a dimly lit, makeshift command center deep within the mountain bunker. Every corner of the room was lined with scraps of equipment, old maps, and hastily drawn plans. The walls hummed with the quiet sound of radios crackling, voices from the few remaining human resistance cells scattered across the globe. Ethan stood at the head of the table, his face set in grim determination. The mission ahead would be the most dangerous yet. It was their last chance to strike a blow against the Stelchans before Earth's last defenses were completely overwhelmed. The alien invaders had underestimated humanity once. Now they would make the same mistake again. But this time, the resistance wasn't going to play by the Stelchans' rules. Ethan's mind was laser-focused on one objective: breaking through the impenetrable Stelchan shield. The alien forces had created a protective barrier around their main command center, a shield so powerful that it rendered even Earth's most advanced weapons useless. Without that shield down, humanity's chances of victory were slim to none. It was the heart of the Stelchan occupation, the nerve center that controlled every move they made. The team had learned one crucial piece of information from their underground spies. There was a weak point in the shield, a small, almost imperceptible flaw that, if hit with the right force at the right time, could temporarily deactivate the entire protective barrier. A perfect opportunity for the human resistance to strike. The plan was simple: infiltrate the Stelchan fortress, plant the EMP device near the weak point in their shield, and then get out before the alien forces could react. It was a high-risk operation, and the odds of survival were slim. But Ethan wasn't in the business of thinking about odds. He was in the business of fighting to win, even if that meant sacrificing everything. "We don't have much time," Ethan said, looking over his team. "The Stelchans are closing in on our last stronghold. Once they finish sweeping through the cities, they'll target this base. We'll be trapped here. This mission is our only shot at taking down their shield and giving humanity a fighting chance." Sergeant Kelly, ever the skeptic, raised her eyebrows. "You're sure we can hit that weak point? I've seen how the Stelchans react when they sense danger. They'll throw everything they have at us." Ethan looked her in the eye, unflinching. "We don't have a choice. We hit them fast, hit them hard, and disappear before they can retaliate." "Understood," Kelly replied, her tone a mix of resolve and concern. "Let's get to it." The plan was put into motion. The team, Ethan, Kelly, Sergeant Matthews, and 2 other skilled operatives, would travel to the heart of the Stelchan fortress, hidden beneath the cloak of night, using one of the alien shuttles they had stolen weeks earlier. Their mission was dangerous, their chances of success slim. But if they failed, Earth would fall. As the shuttle lifted off from the bunker's hidden launch bay, a tense silence fell over the team. Each of them knew the gravity of the situation. The world as they knew it was teetering on the brink of collapse. The fate of humanity rested on their shoulders. The shuttle hummed steadily as it made its way toward the Stultian fortress. The eerie glow of the alien fleet loomed above them, a constant reminder of the overwhelming power their enemies possessed. But Ethan held his gaze steady, his hands gripping the controls with unwavering precision. "We're coming in too close," Matthews whispered, his voice tense. "We'll be spotted." "Not if we do this right," Ethan said, a determined edge to his voice. "We're cloaking ourselves, remember. Keep your heads down, and don't make a sound." The shuttle entered the outer atmosphere of the Stultian stronghold, its cloaking device engaged, rendering it invisible to the enemy sensors. But Ethan knew that this wouldn't last long. They had only a small window of time before the Stultians realized something was amiss. Once they did, the entire alien fleet would be mobilized, and every last soldier would come hunting them. "Here we go," Ethan muttered, his eyes fixed on the destination ahead. The fortress loomed large before them, an intimidating structure of steel and alien metal, its walls bristling with energy weapons and sentry turrets. As the shuttle neared the entrance, a deep rumbling sound shook the ship. A massive defensive shield shimmered into view, completely surrounding the complex. It was impenetrable, unless you knew where to strike. Ethan's heart raced. "Prepare for entry. We'll make our way through the tunnels to the shield generator." The shuttle landed with a soft thud inside a hidden underground bay, its engines powering down. The team moved swiftly, gathering their gear and preparing for the hardest part of the mission. Their path was lined with winding corridors and dark tunnels, all built to confuse any intruders. The Stultians had anticipated every possible attack route. But the humans had learned to adapt, and they weren't about to let their enemies stop them now. "Stay sharp," Ethan ordered, leading the team down the narrow passage. "The EMP is on a timer. We'll have about 3 minutes once we plant it before the shield reactivates." Sergeant Kelly gripped her rifle tightly. 3 minutes. "You sure that's enough?" "We won't need more," Ethan said, his voice cold and calculated. "We'll hit them hard and fast. Get in, get out." The further they moved into the fortress, the more tense the air became. The hum of alien technology buzzed in the background, growing louder as they approached the shield generator. The walls seemed to close in, the weight of their mission pressing down on them. Each step felt like they were inching closer to the unknown. Finally, they reached their destination. The shield generator towered before them, an enormous structure of pulsing energy, guarded by a few alien soldiers. They hadn't been detected yet, but the clock was ticking. Ethan motioned for Matthews and Kelly to take out the guards while he and the others moved toward the generator. As Matthews and Kelly took position, Ethan pulled the EMP device from his pack. The countdown had already begun. "Let's make this count," Ethan whispered to his team. With one swift movement, he activated the device and planted it at the base of the generator. The countdown ticked down -10 seconds. 9, 8. The team froze, the anticipation hanging heavy in the air. If this worked, they could finally make the aliens pay for underestimating humanity. But if they were wrong, Earth would fall, and they would be trapped in the heart of the enemy stronghold. The countdown continued. The EMP device flashed brightly. And then silence. The Stultian shield flickered and vanished. For the first time in weeks, humanity had the upper hand. The quiet hum of the EMP device still echoed in their ears, its brilliant flash having temporarily disabled the Stultian shield. For a brief moment, Earth's defenders had the upper hand. But that brief moment was all they needed to make their move. Captain Ethan Walker could feel the adrenaline coursing through his veins as he watched the enemy's defensive barrier flicker out of existence. The human resistance had just created an opening, a crack in the Stultian defenses, but it was far from a guarantee. There was still much to be done, and every second counted. "Let's move," Ethan barked, his voice sharp. His team quickly recovered from the initial shock of success, moving toward their exit route with military precision. "Get to the shuttle," Kelly shouted, keeping a watchful eye on their surroundings. "We need to get out before the Stultians realize what happened." The base, though massive and seemingly impregnable, now felt vulnerable. The team's footsteps echoed through the cold metallic halls as they sprinted toward the shuttle bay. Every corridor, every corner could hide a Stultian soldier, and if they weren't careful, their small victory could turn into a deadly trap. The countdown for the shield's reactivation was ticking, and there was no time to waste. But as they rounded a corner, the warning klaxons of the fortress went off. Red lights flashed, and the walls trembled as alien ships began to mobilize above them. "They're awake," Sergeant Matthews muttered grimly, as the air around them seemed to hum with energy. "We've got incoming." Ethan's mind raced. The EMP had given them the opening they needed, but it wasn't enough to ensure victory. They still had to break through the enemy lines, and the clock was ticking faster than ever. "We hold them off here," Ethan ordered. "The shuttle's too far. We can't afford to be trapped." The team quickly set up defensive positions, weapons in hand. Despite their advantage, the Stultians wouldn't let a small human team get away without a fight. And now, with their shield down, every Stultian ship was converging on the fortress. They could feel the ground tremble as alien soldiers, sleek and fast, stormed the halls, prepared to eradicate humanity's final hope. "Get to the elevator," Kelly urged, pulling a detonator from her belt. "We'll use it as a distraction. Set the charges, and we can get the hell out of here." The team split up, quickly planting explosives at critical structural points. Every second felt like an eternity, as the thundering footsteps of the Stultian forces grew louder. Their technology was formidable, but human ingenuity had always found a way. The team wasn't just running for their lives. They were about to make the Stultians pay for their arrogance. Ethan reached the control panel for the elevator, fingers flying over the buttons as he activated the last series of commands. The countdown timer blinked on the screen, ticking down the seconds until the charges detonated. 5 seconds, Sergeant Kelly called as she joined him, setting her weapon into place. "Let's move." Without hesitation, Ethan grabbed the trigger, and the charges detonated with an earth-shaking roar. The hallway erupted in flames and debris as explosions ripped through the walls. The elevator doors slid open just in time for the team to jump inside, barely avoiding the impact of falling rubble. The elevator shot up toward the surface, the blast of the charges echoing in the air. It was a temporary victory, but for a fleeting moment, the team could hear only the sound of their own breathing, their hearts pounding with the rush of survival. But their victory was short-lived. The elevator jolted to a stop as the surface doors opened, revealing the darkened night sky. It was now or never. The shuttle was just ahead, their last hope of escape. But as they stepped out, the unmistakable sound of Stultian pursuit echoed in the distance. A fleet of alien soldiers, led by a hulking figure in advanced armor, was closing in. Orstar, the Stultian commander, had arrived. The alien leader stepped forward, his cold, calculating eyes fixed on Ethan and his team. The human resistance had been a thorn in his side from the very beginning. But this was the end. He had already crushed entire worlds. What made Earth any different? "You think you've won." Orstar's voice was a guttural growl, amplified by the alien tech in his helmet. His massive frame towered over the humans. "You are but a fleeting nuisance. You cannot defeat us." Ethan stepped forward, his rifle steady in his hands. "You think we're done. You have no idea who you're dealing with." Orstar chuckled, his alien voice a low, menacing sound. "We are the conquerors of galaxies, human. Your pathetic species cannot." He was cut off by the sound of gunfire. The team opened fire, weapons blasting in all directions, but they were outgunned, outmatched, and outnumbered. The alien soldiers surrounding them fired back with deadly precision. A brutal exchange of gunfire filled the air. "Kelly, Matthews, cover the shuttle," Ethan shouted, his eyes locked on Orsthar. This was it, the final stand. The team had one chance to escape, but they had to hold the line long enough. Orsthar raised his arm, and a powerful beam of energy shot from his wrist, slamming into the ground near Ethan. The explosion sent Ethan tumbling, his vision blurring. He struggled to get back on his feet, blood trickling down his face. "You have no place in this universe," Orsthar sneered, his weapon trained on the human captain. "I will destroy you and your kind." But Ethan wasn't listening to the alien's taunts. He was listening to the sound of his team fighting, holding their ground despite the overwhelming odds. And then something incredible happened. The ground beneath them trembled as the remaining human forces, scattered, bruised, but not broken, arrived. A fleet of human ships, small but fast, emerged from the horizon, their engines roaring as they charged toward the battlefield. Earth's forces, the very ones the Stelchians had written off, had rallied to their side. The tide was turning. Orsthar's eyes widened in disbelief. "No, this cannot be. You cannot." Ethan grinned despite the pain. Rule number 1, Orsthar, never underestimate humanity. The human forces, inspired by the bravery of the small group of survivors, launched a full-scale assault on the Stelchian position. The aliens, caught off guard, were thrown into chaos. The advantage was shifting. Humanity was fighting back, and the Stelchians were beginning to realize just how wrong they had been. With renewed hope, Ethan stood tall, his rifle raised. The fight for Earth was far from over, but the message was clear. No matter how powerful the invaders were, humanity would never back down. Not now, not ever. The air crackled with tension as the first wave of human reinforcements arrived, their ships descending from the sky like a swarm of wasps. Ethan Walker's heart thundered in his chest as he raised his rifle, his eyes never leaving Orsthar, the towering Stelchian commander. The alien forces, who had once believed their victory was inevitable, now found themselves surrounded. The Stelchian soldiers, in their advanced armor and armed with devastating weaponry, turned and fired at the incoming human forces. But they were no match for the fierce determination in the eyes of the humans. These were the survivors, the people who had fought and lost everything, and yet refused to give up. The people who had turned the tables on the invaders and would not let Earth fall without a fight. Orsthar was still reeling from the shock. He had crushed entire civilizations. What was one human race to him? But now, as he looked around at the chaos unfolding, he saw the very thing he feared most: unity. The humans had rallied together. And no matter how powerful the Stelchian technology was, they were no longer alone. Earth's resistance had found its strength in numbers and the sheer will to survive. "You think you can defeat us?" Orsthar roared, his deep voice amplified by the advanced helmet that covered his face. "We are the conquerors of the galaxy. We do not lose." Ethan, still battered and bruised from the previous battle, grinned through the pain. His voice was steady, filled with a calm defiance that Orsthar had never seen in any of his enemies before. "You lost the moment you underestimated us," Ethan replied, his voice carrying across the battlefield. "The moment you thought we were weak." The human reinforcements, ships and fighters streaking across the sky, unleashed a barrage of missiles and laser fire. The Stelchian ships, once so powerful and intimidating, now found themselves swarmed on all sides by Earth's fighters. It was a battle the Stelchians weren't prepared for. The human ships weaved and darted through the alien defenses with incredible precision, their tactics unpredictable. They had adapted. The aliens had underestimated how quickly humanity could learn and evolve under pressure. Ethan's team, despite their injuries and fatigue, fought valiantly, pushing forward with unmatched resilience. Sergeant Kelly's heavy weapon roared as she took out one Stelchian soldier after another, her aim perfect, her resolve unshaken. Matthews, always the tactical mind, coordinated the human forces on the ground, directing them where to strike to maximize damage. The Stelchians, once confident in their ability to crush humanity, were now frantically trying to regroup and retaliate, but it was too late. "We can't let them regroup," Matthews said, his voice tense as he surveyed the battlefield. "We've got them on the ropes. We need to finish this." Ethan nodded, his eyes still locked on Orsthar, who was trying to push forward through the chaos with his elite soldiers, his weapon charging with energy. The Stelchian commander's anger was palpable, his every movement driven by the need to crush the humans who had defied him. But despite his power, despite the sheer size of his forces, Orsthar's arrogance was his undoing. He was too focused on his own superiority to see the truth that humanity would never be broken. As Orsthar advanced, his weapon crackling with energy, Ethan stepped forward. The two locked eyes across the battlefield, each knowing that this would be the final confrontation. This was the moment that would decide Earth's fate. With a sudden burst of speed, Ethan dashed forward, his team close behind. They dodged blasts from the Stelchian soldiers and closed in on Orsthar. As they neared the alien commander, he raised his weapon to fire. But before he could pull the trigger, Ethan dove forward, slamming into the Stelchian's massive frame, knocking the weapon out of his hand. Orsthar, furious, swung a powerful fist at Ethan, but the human captain was already rolling away, narrowly avoiding the strike. Ethan quickly regained his footing, firing a burst from his sidearm. The blast hit the Stelchian's armor, but it only caused a small spark of damage. Orsthar was a giant, a powerhouse, and the armor he wore was nearly indestructible. But Ethan wasn't done yet. He signaled to Kelly, who had been covering them from a distance. In a flash, she fired a well-aimed shot, hitting a vulnerable spot on the back of Orsthar's armor. Sparks flew as the blast connected, and for the first time, the alien commander staggered. "Now," Ethan yelled. With a quick motion, he and Matthews charged in. They moved in perfect sync, exploiting the alien's weakened state. Matthews launched a grenade directly at Orsthar's legs, and the blast sent the commander crashing to the ground with a thunderous roar. The alien soldiers around them hesitated, unsure whether to continue fighting or retreat. The balance had shifted, and Orsthar, once an indomitable force, was now vulnerable. Ethan, breathing heavily, stood over the fallen Stelchian commander, his gun trained on Orsthar's head. The alien leader glared up at him, hatred burning in his eyes. You think this is the end?" Ethan shook his head. "This is only the beginning. You underestimated humanity." Before Orsthar could respond, the remaining Stelchian forces were overwhelmed. Human reinforcements, a relentless tide of fighters, soldiers, and civilians who had been trained for this very moment, surged forward. The Stelchian ships above began to fall from the sky, their once formidable shields no match for the combined might of Earth's weapons. As the battle raged on, Ethan turned away from the alien commander, who was now helpless. The war was not yet won, but Earth had reclaimed a vital victory. The Stelchians, despite their immense technological superiority, had lost. Their attempt to conquer Earth had been thwarted, not by superior technology, but by the human will to survive, to protect their home, and to never give up. In the distance, the first signs of Earth's victory could be seen. The skies, once filled with the ominous shadows of alien ships, were now clear. The human forces had successfully driven back the invaders. The Stelchians had underestimated humanity's strength, and now they would learn that Earth would never be conquered, not while humans still lived. As Ethan watched the skies clear, he felt a deep, overwhelming sense of pride. Earth was not defeated. It had fought back, and it had won. For now.